Amid growing concerns over how to regulate artificial intelligence without stifling its growth, world leaders are gearing up for the AI Action Summit in Paris on Feb 10th. It's a two-day summit that comes just days after China's DeepSeek chatbot shook the global tech landscape, and it's going to focus on AI governance and innovation. French President Emmanuel Macron and the Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be co-chairing the summit. Heavy hitters like Sam Altman of OpenAI are expected to attend, along with possibly the US President Donald Trump and Tesla's Elon Musk, both of whom received invitations from Macron in November. In addition, the summit will see heads of state, Nobel laureates, think tanks, campaigners, researchers, even artists converging in Paris. Now, the summit follows in the footsteps of the AI Safety Summit held in Britain in 2023 and a smaller meeting that took place in Seoul in 2024. The British summit highlighted fears around possible AI doomsday scenarios, and it led to a major milestone. 25 countries, including the US and China, signing a declaration on AI safety. After that, the Seoul summit saw 16 top AI firms pledging voluntary commitments to develop AI with transparency. Now, the Paris summit's focus will be on the increased concentration of power in AI, particularly around key foundational models that are controlled by companies like Microsoft, Alphabet, Amazon, and Meta. The Paris summit's agenda is built on 5 pillars. The first, AI for public good. The second, the future of work, addressing how AI is reshaping jobs and the labor market. The third, innovation and culture, and how to advance both technological excellence and artistic creation. The fourth, trust, focusing on ethical use and safety. And the fifth, perhaps the biggest, global governance of AI, tying together the goals of the other 4 pillars. The summit will open at the Grand Palais on February 10th with a global forum of stakeholders, governments, businesses, civil society groups, researchers, artists, and journalists. The next day, on Feb 11th, the summit of heads of state and government will take place, focusing on unified global action for AI. Now, this gathering comes on the heels of Washington unveiling its Stargate project. It's a massive AI infrastructure initiative spearheaded by OpenAI, SoftBank, Oracle, Microsoft, and NVIDIA, and it's aimed at bolstering the US's AI capabilities. Meanwhile, remember, China's DeepSeek chatbot has redefined industry benchmarks by challenging notions around the investment that's needed to train LLMs, large language models. It has also reignited debates on the inherent bias present in AI systems. India's role as a co-chair at this summit signals India's increasing stake in shaping global AI governance, a move that could have major implications for both innovation and regulation worldwide. But to understand more about what this moment means for India and for the world, Ananay Batra, the founder and CEO of Listener AI, joins us here on the show today just to shed light on this entire topic. Ananay, question number 1. As India co-chairs this summit, what is our priority? How can the country look after its own national interests while navigating conversations on the global stage?
I think one of the most important points for us to take care of is keeping our data to ourselves, right? When it comes to ChatGPT, for example, our data is being used to train the models, right? OpenAI's models. And as far as DeepSeek is concerned, the same thing, right? Our data is used by DeepSeek to train their models further, right? So I think one of the biggest and the most important things here is we should absolutely have our own LLM and remove inherent biases from that, which come from data, right? And essentially make sure our data stays to ourselves. I think that is one of the most important things that we should take care of. And yeah, that should be the top priority.
Can I ask you, post DeepSeek's release, because it's really spurred many conversations around the accuracy of AI bias, especially for a country like India, when you're asking questions around national security to an AI machine. What actions have you seen India take? What conversations have you seen the release of DeepSeek spur when it comes to developing AI, investing in infrastructure here in the country?
I think we have seen a lot of investors waking up to this. Something that we could have done and could have built first wasn't built first. China built it first and definitely open sourced it, right? And one of the major things here is that once you go through a paper, right, you'll see that the model and the weights and everything else is public. So it's not like some of these, this is one of those things that cannot be replicated. It absolutely can. But one of the things that's being overlooked here is the R&D cost, right? Because the $5.56 million cost to train the GPUs is just the GPU cost. It's not the R&D cost, and it has nothing to do with, the KV caching and any other advances that they made on the model, right? So that's one of the bigger parts here. And see, one thing that we're lacking here is AI education, right? We don't really have a lot of people who can work with foundational model stuff. There's very few who leave for the Valley or someplace else and build models for some other companies, right? So that this is one of the biggest concerns that we have here. There's not a lot of people who can work with foundational models.
I just want to understand from you, as this summit takes place and India navigates with other countries, is it fair to say that China is the elephant in the room? A lot of experts have called China the elephant in the room when this summit will take place. Do you see it like that, or do you think navigating both the United States and China is equally important when it comes to global conversations?
I think they are equally important. You could argue that China is slightly bigger than the States when it comes to the advancements and what they might have under the belt. When it comes to the States, right? Sam Altman did discuss that they have been on the wrong side of history recently, and they should have been more open about their models. They should have maybe open source models quicker. They haven't open sourced any yet. So I think that's one of the major parts here, right? One of the ways to kill the bigger guys is just open source your model, right? If I have a better model than say a DeepSeek today, and I open source it, then nobody's going to use DeepSeek anymore, right? People are going to jump onto my model. So this is one of those things that in order to kill the competition, you just release a better open source model, right? That's there. But yeah, I think we should tackle this very strategically in the sense that when you even ask DeepSeek certain questions about India, right, it's going to give you different answers.
Right.
It's going to refrain from answering altogether, right? That happens. Or if you ask it about the Tiananmen Square, right, the massacre that happened, everything in the 1980s, if I recall correctly, it's going to refrain from answering from that. So these are some of the questions that these models are inherently sort of like told not to answer. It's been sort of hard coded in these models. So that's there. But in order to bolster trust and make sure these models work well for everyone, we have to make sure these certain points need to be discussed.
Okay, let me ask you lastly. We've shared with our audiences that the main goal of this summit is creating a global framework for AI regulation. Tell us, what does that mean? Firstly, what would it actually be regulating? And is it actually possible to create a global framework?
I think, see, one of the first things that comes to mind when it comes to creating a regulatory framework, right, is data, right? It's ethical sourcing of data. And I think all of us know that OpenAI hasn't done that, like ever, like since inception, right? They haven't done that. In order to create their video model, they scraped YouTube videos. In order to create the text model, they scraped a bunch of news channels, TV outlets, et cetera, right? They're facing a lawsuit from New York Times right now. So, I mean, this is one of the most paramount things. One should do is ethical sourcing of data. It's partnering with news channels, maybe newsroom, media houses, et cetera, to get the data ethically. That's number one. And this should happen with all countries, with all AI companies, right? Building foundational models. The other thing here is, just making sure that, so this problem, right? This is actually not a very small problem. It's a massive problem
Right?
because this is going to create issues with AI alignment. Since AI is going to know in the future that, assume that there is a super intelligence in the future, right? It's going to know that the data it was trained on was not sourced ethically, right? And even if we were to add checks and balances to make sure that it sort of forgets it or maybe overrides that fact, it's not going to do that. It knows that it's being fooled around, right? It knows that it's being lied to. So this is one of those things that we need to be very careful about, even when it comes to the alignment issue. We want to make sure that AI does not wipe us out, because there definitely could be a doomsday scenario. I'm not saying that it's probable. I would give it like maybe a 40% chance of like AI wiping us out, right? And maybe like a 45-50% chance of it not wiping us out, us going into utopia. So that's that. But yeah, I think first things first, data, right? Get the data ethically. Make sure that AI is being fed the right values, the right
Right.
human values we wanted to know, right? And see, most importantly, I think the creator of a benevolent AI needs to be benevolent themselves, right? I don't think a non-benevolent person could create a benevolent AI. I don't think it's just not possible, according to me, right? So that is one of the most important things here. So I mean, if you were to take that fact, um, I don't think Sam Altman could build a benevolent AI, could he? Given the fact that we have at play here.
I appreciate you've touched on quite a philosophical aspect to this entire conversation. Arinay, grateful for you joining us, shedding light on this entire topic and the questions that remain in the days coming. All right, this AI summit will take place in just a few days from now. It obviously remains to be seen how India navigates, obviously champions for itself, but also navigates these tougher questions with other countries on the table. That's all for now.